It's Wednesday, May 13th, 2026, and it's time for The Swamp, where I cover daily updates on the federal machine. So if you enjoyed the video, please give a quick like, subscribe, drop all the comments you want, and every article in this video is linked below in the description, and the highlight segments from tonight's episode will drop tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern. Starting off with Vice President J.D. Vance. Vice President Vance's task force has uncovered billions of dollars in fraud. The work is just beginning, and the Vance-led task force cuts off $1.4 billion from home health and hospice providers suspected of fraud in multiple states, in fact. And they actually created a brand new X account, or on Twitter, or what have you, whatever you feel like calling it these days, which is fantastic news for me because I exclusively use the X platform because that's the social media platform that's favored by everyone in the government. So another one from Vice President J.D. Vance with 3 American flag emojis from the Wall Street Journal. Vance to the states, address fraud or lose your federal Medicaid funding. And the posts roll on to the White House. Huge. Vice President Vance's anti-fraud task force just withheld $1.4 billion in federal funding after a sweeping crackdown on fraud operations in California and Minnesota and other states, probably blue states, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure there's some fraud in red states too. The era of blank checks and zero accountability is over. This was 9 hours ago as of this recording. I believe all of these posts came out today. $1.4 billion from home health hospice providers suspected of fraud. And here is the new account. White House Task Force to Eliminate Fraud. They just literally created it May of 2026. They don't give an exact day, but I believe it was within the last 24 hours. And here's the image they went with Vice President J.D. Vance, President Trump. We will find out who that is. I think he works with the FTC, but I might be wrong. Maybe correct me in the comments, but I believe that I'm going to get to him very shortly. And this is, I don't know if this is the first post that they have, but this is today's anti-fraud news. Here, let me just double check. Let me just see. Is that, in fact, the first? It probably isn't, but maybe it is. Let's see how far it goes down. So 4 hours ago. Let's just take a look, see how far. 6 hours ago. So yeah, man, this is all from today. So they're already posting heavy on this account. What is this? 8 hours ago. I mean, look at this. Like, oh, okay, 85 posts. Of course it says it up there at the top. 85 posts in total. So let's see, going back to May, 11 hours. So anyway, I'm not going to keep digging around all the way down to the bottom. I believe that it was posted today, though. So today's anti-fraud news. I'm assuming they're probably going to do something similar to this on a daily basis, or at least if they have some fraud news, excuse me, as soon as they have some fraud news to cover, assuming that. And we're going to start with fraudulent home healthcare and hospice providers are stealing from every American taxpayer. That's why we've announced a nationwide moratorium on new certifications for 6 months. So CMS, or the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, can find out how deep the fraud goes. I think it might terrify some officials and taxpayers, especially taxpayers, because is it going to get into the hundreds of billions of dollars? I think at this point, I don't think anything would surprise anybody at all. I mean, like, we're pushing $40 trillion in debt. It all had to go somewhere. Exclusive, U.S. halting Medicare enrollments for new home healthcare and hospice providers. And let me just make sure if they did or didn't leave the article link. And it doesn't look like they did, but that's all right. And next one, every day the Fraud Task Force works with Dr. Oz with CMS to cut suspected fraudulent providers off and save American taxpayers billions of dollars. That's the next one. Vance-led task force cuts off $1.4 billion from home health hospice providers suspected of fraud. White House, states must fight fraud too. Taxpayers have given states billions to fight fraud and prosecute sickos who commit elder abuse. Where are the results? The federal government is ready to take action. Vice President to the states, address fraud or lose your federal Medicaid funding. And the next one, states aren't entitled to taxpayer money for fraudulent Medicaid services. Americans shouldn't have to pay fraudsters and states to waste your hard-earned money. This administration and the Fraud Task Force are fighting for accountability. The feds defer $1.3 billion or $1,300 million in California Medicaid funding amid healthcare fraud crackdown. Oh, but the Democrats say there's no fraud happening in California. We're on top of things. The entire Trump administration is committed to eliminating fraud, whether we're saving hundreds of millions or just a few $1,000s. Every federal agency is hard at work fighting for you. That one's from the Daily Caller exclusive. Trump administration intercepts $60 million in student loan fraud. It's kind of frustrating, to be honest, that they don't link all these articles. I mean, you'd think they would. Look, they took the time to grab a screenshot of the article. I mean, why not just drop the link down in the comments? But regardless, they should be fairly easy to find. If they were there, then I would link them. But unfortunately, for the sake of time, I can't go digging around for them. Anyway, shouldn't be too hard to find. All right, and I've got a lot more information with regard to fraud. J.D. Vance, follow White House fraud TF for task force for all our work in rooting out all fraud, no matter how big or how small. And let's see, today is the day. Under President Trump, we are unleashing the most aggressive federal anti-fraud efforts in American history. We won't rest until we root out every bit of fraud infecting our government and screwing over taxpayers. More coming tomorrow. Stay tuned, which obviously tomorrow is actually today because this was posted on May the 12th. And that's what's leading up to all of this rollout of information that we're going to get through. But let's have a look at this. Maybe he'll give us something
here. We have to take the fraud issue seriously. We really have the most accelerated, aggressive anti-fraud operation that we've ever seen from the federal government.
Every week, I get a report from the task force. You know, we have our weekly meeting, and I am shocked every single day by the things that we find.
This is not just theft of the American people's money. This is also theft of critical services that the American people rely on.
No amount of fraud is too big or too small. If you're defrauding the taxpayer, you ought to go to prison, and anybody who's helping you ought to go to prison too.
Yeah, I could only imagine the numbers that they're really looking at behind closed doors that I'm sure they're going to end up rolling out to the public at some point. So yeah, man, J.D. Vance is vice president. He found a hell of a busy position to keep himself occupied with, that's for sure. CMS, so we're going to start here with CMS, announced a nationwide data-driven moratoria on new Medicare enrollment for hospices and home health agencies. The moratoria will allow CMS to temporarily halt the influx of new providers into these high-risk categories and stop fraudulent activity. And we're going to read some more of that on cms.gov, which, yeah, is 6 months hospice and home health agency enrollment moratoria. I mean, I think it's a good idea. If it's a new business that's opening up, yeah, you want to make sure that they're on the up and up before you start dumping taxpayer dollars into their laps. And all right, so let me make this a little bit larger, just in case you might be looking at this on your smartphone and you want to read along. And action builds on administration's whole of government effort to crush fraud and protect Medicare. In coordination with Vice President J.D. Vance's anti-fraud task force, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is taking decisive action to protect Medicare beneficiaries and taxpayer dollars through implementation of a 6-month nationwide data-driven moratoria on new Medicare enrollment for hospices and home health agencies. The moratoria will allow CMS to temporarily halt the influx of new providers into these high-risk categories, a key source of fraudulent activity. Today's move continues the Trump administration's crackdown on fraud, waste, and abuse in the Medicare program by stopping improper billing and preventing bad actors from entering the system. Quote, we've seen systemic and deeply troubling fraud in the hospice and home health space, with bad actors exploiting some of our most vulnerable Medicare patients and stealing money from the American taxpayer, said CMS Administrator Dr. Mehmet Oz. Today, we're shutting the door on fraud and preventing new bad actors from entering Medicare, while we're aggressively identify, investigate, and remove those already exploiting them. This is about protecting patients, restoring integrity, and safeguarding taxpayer dollars. And they gave a percentage at some point. It's honestly a pretty scary percentage of the amount of Medicare money that they believe is either being just straight up fraudulently just stolen or improper billing or what have you, which is probably just a form of fraud anyway. It's something like 20%. Like 20% or 25% is just fraudulently disappears like a fart in the wind. But hopefully not for much longer. During the 6-month moratoria, CMS will intensify targeted investigations, deploy advanced data analytics, and accelerate the removal of hospice and HHA providers from the Medicare program that are suspected of committing fraud. This nationwide approach will also eliminate the ability of bad actor operators to evade detection by simply shifting across state lines. In addition, the moratoria will apply to all applications for initial Medicare enrollment and certain changes in majority ownership, which are frequently used to obscure control by bad actors. The moratoria will not impact current enrollments, and existing providers can continue to deliver services to Medicare beneficiaries, because I'm sure they're going to be auditing you at some point anyway. CMS announcement today follows our declaration earlier this year of a similar moratorium to prevent fraudulent Medicare billing by certain durable medical equipment, prosthetics, or orthotics and supplies, DME POS companies. With 3 separate moratoria now in place, CMS has taken some of the most significant fraud prevention actions in the agency's history. The moratoria are part of the CMS's ongoing efforts to stop fraud before it starts, using data-driven prevention and real-time enforcement as part of a coordinated federal approach. Recent CMS action, undertaken in coordination with VP Vance's anti-fraud task force, has included the suspension of payments to 773 hospices and 23 HHAs suspected of fraud in Los Angeles alone, representing $70 million in suspected fraud funds thus far. Additional CMS work to crush fraud in the hospice and HHA areas has included revoking or deactivating hundreds of hospices and HHAs engaged in improper or fraudulent activity, conducting nationwide hospice site visits to verify operations and identify suspicious activity, heightened oversight of newly enrolled Medicare hospice providers in states with elevated fraud risk, including Arizona, California, Georgia, Ohio, Nevada, and Texas, launching a new publicly available hospice scoring system to increase transparency and identify providers with troubling patterns of utilization, quality, or compliance, implementing enhanced enrollment screening measures for high-risk HHAs, including site verification of reported practice locations and fingerprinting-based background checks, and expanding a demonstration project that allows pre- and post-claim review of HHA claims in Florida, Illinois, Oklahoma, Ohio, North Carolina, and Texas to stop improper payments before they occur. And additional information on the hospice and home health agency moratoria can be found via the Federal Register at the following link and at the next link. With regard to hospice, second link, the first one is for home health, which I'm going to link this entire article. So if you want to have a look at more of that information, you can just follow the links and it'll take you right there. From Dr. Oz, Medicaid is the single largest insurer for substance use disorder treatment. Stopping the proliferation of addiction protects the program. We are not tolerating drug dealers or drug traffickers under this administration. Here's what I saw in LA last week. I mean, you got to give him credit. Like, he actually goes out into the field. He goes out into the thick of it and sees things on the front lines. So let's have a look at this.
But the actual cost just of Medicare is billions of dollars and Medicaid. But the cost to the society of having folks addicted to drugs at the massive scale that they are right now is measured in hundreds of billions of dollars of lost productivity. I'm just watching, but there's some brave folks there. They're all accounted for. They are armed to the hilt. They know exactly what they're doing. It's game time.
What we got here today is a massive presence of law enforcement getting ready to make a change to Los Angeles about what's happening with these open-air drug markets.
So we're approaching MacArthur Park, that building in there. They just walk in there and they can't stop them.
Yeah, they just snap.
LAPD has no tools to stop petty theft. They will not arrest you for petty theft.
Please place your hands on your head.
No, they won't. It's like up to $900.
I can see 100 cops, LAPD, 200 of these DEA agents.
So as
Damn,
we're
dude, they're
speaking,
just
while we're
ripping out the
sitting
entire
here,
wall?
while this is
All
happening,
right.
someone just overdosed. The paramedics responded to get that person.
How is it possible that an area of the city that should be, you know, a nice, pretty, thriving area has become a wasteland? What I witnessed
it used to be
today
gorgeous.
is a rescue mission. Medicaid is the single largest payer for substance use disorders. We are here. We will put that money in. But the cost to society of allowing these addictive behaviors to continue is $100 billion a year of lost productivity. It's the
$100
first ability
billion.
to come into task force.
He's out there
which
giving a
Vice
speech and
President
everything.
Lee's, which the president created, is not going to tolerate this anymore. We're coming for you, not to hurt, to rescue you.
Well, and you know, that's what the landscape or the cityscape looks like when it's under Democrat rule for decades on end. They take what's a beautiful landscape, a beautiful city, and they ruin it, completely destroy it. Secretary Brooke Rollins, no more fraud. And by the way, Secretary Brooke Rollins, she is the Secretary of Agriculture under the leadership of President Trump, of course. No more wasting your taxpayer dollars on crooked schemes and bloated bureaucracy. The White House just launched a White House Fraud Task Force to hunt down every abuse, expose the crooks, and deliver ruthless accountability in Washington. Last summer, the USDA sent letters to all states demanding SNAP data to root out waste, fraud, and abuse. Yeah, because the Department of Agriculture, they oversee the SNAP system, food stamps, and whatnot. 29 states complied. 21 Democrat-led states sued to block us because it just kind of makes you wonder. Maybe they're fraudulently handing out this shit to all kinds of people who shouldn't be getting them, like maybe illegal immigrants. Because if they have nothing to hide, why wouldn't they just turn it over? In fact, this is all taxpayer funded. So frankly, they should be required by federal law to turn over all of this. I can't believe that this isn't, you know, fully transparent in some way or another to the public at large. at least like through a FOIA request or something. The data uncovered at least $3 billion in potential SNAP fraud across compliant states, including more than 186,000 deceased recipients and over 355,000 duplicate enrollees. So people getting double payments for who knows how many years. Last month, alongside VP in Minnesota, we helped take down 20 retailers accused of abusing SNAP. Follow the White House Task Force for updates, raw investigations, bombshell exposures, and nonstop updates on protecting your hard-earned money from the swamp. From the swamp. Join the fight and stay ahead of the corruption. Let's continue to work to root out fraud, or waste, fraud, and abuse. And don't mind if I do. I'm already following them. I've already got the White House Task Force, Fraud Task Force, linked up to 2 of my lists that I follow on a daily basis, so I can try and stay on top of it. The White House Task Force to eliminate fraud. And another one this one from the U.S. Department of Labor. As members of VP's task force to eliminate fraud, Acting Secretary Sonderling, 47, and DOLOIG, the official X account for the U.S. Department of Labor Office of the Inspector General, they are teaming up to restore integrity to our nation's unemployment insurance system, prevent fraud before it happens, and hold criminals accountable. And this is from the Acting Secretary Keith Sonderling. And let's see if he's got it updated. Yep, Acting Secretary of Labor. And he says unemployment insurance systems have faced serious financial and performance failures for too long. The U.S. Department of Labor is partnering with the OIG, Department of Labor OIG, to investigate potential fraud and misuse, restore accountability, and protect workers and taxpayers. And they've got an article of their own over on the Department of Labor. And it looks like I've already got it all sized up. U.S. Department of Labor, Office of the Inspector General, collaboration marks new era in stopping unemployment insurance fraud. So they're going after everything, man. They're going after food stamps. They're going after unemployment. They've already been going after the PPP, the small business loans that were given out during COVID. They handed over something like 550,000 names to the Department of the Treasury, and they're going to start combing through that. And I'm sure we're going to probably see up to hundreds of thousands of arrests because people have been defrauding the government just there alone, plus Medicare, Medicaid, and it goes on and on and on. U.S. Department of Labor and its Office of the Inspector General has announced a partnership in furtherance of President Donald J. Trump's executive order establishing the task force to eliminate fraud. Under the leadership of Vice President J.D. Vance, the department and the OIG will work together to safeguard American taxpayers and address widespread fraud and performance concerns related to the unemployment insurance programs administered all across the country. Quote, unemployment insurance systems nationwide face significant financial and performance failures. For too long, these problems have gone unchallenged. That ends now, said Acting Secretary of Labor Keith Sonderling. The Department of Labor is working alongside OIG agents to investigate potential fraud and misuse. Our mission is clear: restore accountability and safeguard workers and taxpayers. This multi-agency partnership within the department demonstrates an unparalleled level of collaboration with the OIG, with department program offices and its independent watchdog working shoulder to shoulder to stop fraud before taxpayer dollars are put at risk. We're taking a proactive approach by working directly with the strike teams deployed by the department's Employment and Training Administration, providing data and analytical capabilities and support, placing investigators at the front lines where the threat begins. Together with the acting secretary, we are committed to a zero-tolerance mission, ensuring not one fraudulent dollar leaves the building, said U.S. Department of Labor Inspector General Anthony P. D'Esposito. I mean, of course, these are kind of generic blanket statements. I mean, we kind of get the idea, but I'll read just a little bit more. This partnership gives us a direct line to the Vice President's task force to eliminate fraud, supercharging our investigations and prosecutions to deliver faster, stronger justice and put fraudsters behind bars, which I think that's a fantastic idea, because I can only imagine how long it would take for that to make its way all the way through the system. Like somebody who's suspected of committing SNAP benefits fraud or whatever probably goes from this department to that department, from this bureaucrat to that bureaucrat, probably takes 3, 4, 5 years, and by the time it ends up exactly where it's supposed to be, statute of limitations ran out, or maybe they moved to another address or something, they didn't report it. Who knows? But I'm sure that not very many people end up getting prosecuted for this stuff, but hopefully that's changing. Acting Secretary Sonderling and Inspector General D'Esposito both serve on the task force to eliminate fraud, which is committed to fighting fraud, closing loopholes, enforcing eligibility rules, and protecting benefits for eligible Americans, while ensuring states administering unemployment insurance benefits do the same. So anyway, let's see here. Fiscal year 2025 alone, these 6 states, the 6 states are California, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. Those 6 states issued more than $2.6 billion in improper unemployment insurance benefits, including over $1.2 billion in fraudulent payments. Additionally, in fiscal year 2025, California, Massachusetts, and New York topped the list of states with the most fraud exposure. Yeah, that's no shock at all. I mean, of course, I guess to be fair, they are very populated states, but still, they just happen to be extremely blue states too, for that matter. All right, and let's go back and roll on to the next one. From Rapid Response 47, VP-led task force cuts off $1.4 billion from home health hospice providers suspected of fraud. Okay, so this appears to be one of those articles that I complained that weren't present in those first posts. And we'll get into this just a little bit. Vice President Vance's anti-fraud task force withheld $1.4 billion in federal funding from home health and hospice providers nationwide after a wave of suspensions enacted by anti-fraud task force targeting operations in California, Minnesota, and several other states. Approximately 90% of the suspected providers have not reached out to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the agency tasked with combating fraud, waste, and abuse, since payments have been suspended. So it's almost like they're guilty just by simply not calling. And somebody made that apparent. It might have actually been Dr. Oz. He's like, we cut off hundreds of these businesses because we suspected them of committing fraud, and we didn't get a single phone call from any of them saying, why did you cut us off? Like, we're trying to provide services here. We need this funding. He's like, we didn't get a single call from any of them. It almost makes you wonder if they are legitimately taking taxpayer money or not. Obviously not. Trump administration officials told Fox that they believe a lack of communication between alleged fraudulent providers and CMS indicates that the providers were not legitimate enterprises. The suspended group includes long-term providers who have been pocketing federal funds for years while failing to communicate with CMS. A senior Trump administration source told Fox, quote, the vice president's task force continues to stop the flow of taxpayer funds before they fall into the hands of fraudsters. Yeah, we get it. We're committed to doing all we can. President Trump has made the eradication of systemic fraud, systemic fraud a cornerstone of his administration's domestic policy. On Monday, CMS Administrator Dr. Mehmet Oz blasted California's officials over the state's hospice crisis, charging that the fraud is stealing your lives and pointing to a sophisticated web of international graft. And so they've got the Russian government involvement in LA, Chinese government involved in a big fraud ring in New York. Let's see. The Cuban connection pointed out by former Miami Mayor Francis Suarez. We've got twice as many durable medical equipment suppliers selling wheelchairs and canes as there are McDonald's in South Florida. That's crazy. So that they have twice the number of medical equipment supply stores in South Florida than they have McDonald's. The owners often flee back to Cuba with the money the moment we move in on them. So, all right, so it goes on from there. It looks like they go over just a little bit of numbers here and there. But I also have statements from Dr. Oz and VP Vance, and they're probably going to go over some of those numbers as well. And from the White House, Vice President Vance announces the White House task force is sending across 50 Medicaid programs letters that will require them to show that they are effectively and aggressively prosecuting Medicaid fraud. If they do not, they are going to turn off the money that goes to these anti-fraud units. You gotta love to hear it, man. From HHS Rapid Response, we are going to turn off the money. Breaking, Vice President Vance announces that the White House Fraud Task Force is requiring all state Medicaid programs to show they are aggressively prosecuting fraud. So let's get started with these.
We are sending across 50 Medicaid programs. We are sending letters that will require them to show that they are effectively and aggressively prosecuting Medicaid fraud in their states. And if they do not aggressively prosecute Medicaid fraud, we are going to turn off the money that goes to these anti-fraud units.
Yeah, as they absolutely should. They have no excuse but not to report back on it. And another one from the vice president. I'm sure there are going to be some politicians who say that what we're doing here is harming the Medicaid program. We're trying to save the Medicaid program. Of course,
there are going to be some, I'm sure, some politicians who say what you're doing here is harming the Medicaid program. We're trying to save the Medicaid program from dysfunctional state bureaucrats. If you allow hundreds of millions, billions, even more money to go out the door, not to healthcare services for low-income families, but to fraudsters, you eventually are going to destroy the Medicaid program. So this is why we say red state, blue state, this does not need to be a political or a partisan issue. We want to work with you to eliminate fraud and make these programs last longer for the people who truly need them.
I mean, look, a lot of people have been on the fence with all these government programs as far as like our national deficit. Just with all the fraud and everything, I think a lot of people are just at the point where either shut it all down and restart it from complete scratch. We have to like do a complete overhaul, a full reboot of all these welfare programs, entitlement programs, and what have you. And then, of course, there's other people that are like, well, you know what? We need the government to be as small as possible. Just cut it all off completely. I mean, if there's a state that wants to hand out benefits like that, let the states do it. You know, don't force or have the government force all the states to work together to do this, because, you know, the bigger the government is, the more corrupt it tends to get. Donald Trump Jr., this is what action to end fraud looks like, from Andrew Colvett. Breaking, Vice President Vance just deferred $1.3 billion in Medicaid reimbursements to California because the state refuses to take fraud seriously. The simple reason is because the state of California has not taken fraud very seriously. That's exactly what he said.
First, we're announcing that the federal government is deferring $1.3 billion in Medicaid reimbursements from the state of California. And the simple reason is because the state of California has not taken fraud very seriously, and because of that,
they have not.
We see a lot of the consequences that I just referenced. And again, let me highlight the fact that this really is two separate victims. So there are California taxpayers and American taxpayers who are being defrauded because California isn't taking its program seriously.
The Californians are getting the double whammy.
But also you have people who've been prescribed medications that they don't even need. Sometimes they've had drugs put into their bodies that they don't need because fraudsters have actually encouraged false prescriptions and false administration of medications. So think about this. You're just a person trying to go see a doctor. You assume that your doctor is doing the right thing, but these fraudulent healthcare providers are getting rich by giving people medications they don't even need. It's a defrauding of the American taxpayer,
Quotas.
But it's a
violation
violation of the trust that should exist between every American and the people who prescribe the medications. That's one thing that we're targeting, and this is why we're taking this action, is because we want California to get serious about this fraud.
Well, yeah, and you got a lot of those pharmaceutical reps that show up to different doctors' offices with these like massive food plates and all these like nice gifts and everything, and then they offer these massive incentives. Like if you write 150 of this prescription over the next month, we'll give you like a $10,000 bonus. I mean, all of that should be absolutely illegal. Maybe they've cracked down on that. I don't know. I heard about that some years back, so maybe that's not a thing, although I highly doubt it. I'm sure they're doing exactly that still. That actually reminds me, this was probably 15, 16, 17 years ago. I went to a doctor and, not going into any kind of details or whatever, but I bite my nails as a habit, as millions of other people do. And he took notice of that, and he gave me a prescription for Xanax on the spot. And I'd never had it before. I tried it, didn't like it, never took it again, but I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. So I don't know if he was just handing out Xanax to everybody or what, but I mean, that was kind of crazy. I don't know, man. Like that was a weird time back in the state of Florida, like back in the 2000s. A lot of doctors doing a lot of weird stuff back then. All right, so let's head down to the next one from Rapid Response 47. Quote, guess how many convictions or indictments has Hawaii had over the last few years in its Medicaid fraud program? The answer is 0. Not a single indictment, not a single conviction. So we'll have a look.
We're going to very aggressively encourage the states to take Medicare fraud more seriously. So I think a lot of you understand, but for those of you watching at home who don't appreciate this, the Medicaid system that exists in the United States is really 50 separate systems. The federal government pays most of the Medicaid money,
probably 51,
but then each of the individual states actually administers the Medicaid program. Now, we have red states and blue states that go after fraud aggressively, but we also unfortunately have some states, mostly blue states unfortunately, that do not take Medicaid fraud very seriously. So you have what's called Medicaid Fraud Control Units.
We don't want to give Trump a single win.
MFCUs. These Medicaid fraud, these anti-fraud units within the Medicaid program, we generously, meaning the federal government generously gives these fraud control units many, many billions of dollars across the United States of America so that they can take Medicaid fraud seriously. But let me just give you an example to highlight how absurd some of these Medicaid fraud programs are, because they're not actually being used at all. This is a tool. This is a tool that we want the states to use, but unfortunately, a lot of states aren't using these tools at all. Let me highlight this with just a couple of separate statistics. So, the Hawaii Medicaid program has received billions and billions of dollars from the federal taxpayers, and of course, Hawaii taxpayers have paid in a lot of money into this program over the last years as well. Guess how many convictions or indictments has Hawaii had over the last few years in its Medicaid fraud program? The answer is 0. Not a single indictment, not a single conviction, because the administrators of the Hawaii program just don't take it seriously. They don't think that fraud is a big enough problem. They don't care about protecting resources. They don't care about protecting that Medicaid program.
Yeah, you know,
so
doing
what
their
does that
jobs.
mean? That means that if you're committing fraud in Medicaid in Hawaii, at least up until now, hopefully now they're going to take it seriously, you have had
they have a
effectively
fraud
free
office.
reign from
You know,
the
somebody's
government
getting
of
paid for
Hawaii
doing
to commit
nothing.
as much fraud as you want. That is a complete disgrace. In
Insane.
New York, which does a little bit better, but not by much, New York has had 9 indictments over the last year. 9 indictments. That's a $100 billion Medicaid program just in New York, and you've had 9 indictments. Indiana, which has about a third of the population of the state of New York, has had more than 4 times as many indictments over the same period.
So 36.
So do we think,
Still kind of
does
a small
anybody
number,
here
though.
seriously think that the good people of Indiana are 12 times more likely to commit fraud than the people of New York? No, of course not. That's absurd.
They just work
What is happening
better at
is
the
that
jobs.
the people in, the leadership in New York are just not taking the fraud issue seriously. They're not using these anti-fraud control units to actually investigate and indict the fraud.
Well, and imagine if and when they get to the point where they can get the bottom line number. Like, how many billions of dollars have they confirmed that was fraudulently taken from the system in a place like New York? If they determine it's like $15 billion out of the $100 billion, I mean, it wasn't just 9 people who took $15 billion. It probably thousands of people in total. And that is absolutely crazy. Just how easy it is just to get away with arguably millions of dollars for God knows how many years. And Vice President J.D. Vance rips the Biden administration's failure to prevent medical identity theft after a California psychotherapist was stripped of her benefits. Vance highlights the doctor's case, 40 years in the medical field, only to have her Medicare turned off because a fraudster exploited the system. So let's have a look at this.
Just last month, a California psychotherapist, a woman who had spent 40 years treating patients, helping people deal with problems, found out that her Medicare program had been turned off, that she did not have access to the resources that she had been paying into for her entire life. Why? Because a fraudster had stolen her identity and signed her up for healthcare services that she didn't need, and so she had been turned off of the healthcare services that she did need. This happens way too much in the United States of America, and it happens because until recently, we did not have a government or an administration that actually took the fraud program and took anti-fraud prevention seriously.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable, especially if they determine that identity theft had taken place. I would imagine that she's eligible now, because it clearly wasn't her fault that somebody stole her identity. Governor Mike DeWine, Ohio, right? Yep, from... I think. Well, anyway, it says Ohio takes all Medicaid fraud allegations seriously and will continue to work with the Trump administration to proceed with several new fraud, waste, and abuse reforms immediately. Ohio has been a national leader in catching and prosecuting Medicaid fraud thanks to a strong partnership between Ohio Medicaid and the Ohio Attorney General's Office and its Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. Since the beginning of 2023, Ohio has secured 444 Medicaid fraud indictments, 481 convictions, and 146 civil settlements and judgments, resulting in $78.4 million in recovered taxpayer funds. Those numbers are far bigger than what they're reporting in Indiana and a hell of a lot bigger than New York, and they only recovered $78 million. And you know, in a state like New York, it's got to be measured in the billions of dollars of money that was fraudulently stolen from Medicaid, which would have to go into the many thousands of people who would be guilty of committing fraud against Medicaid, Medicare, and so on.
Medicaid fraud issues in Ohio, the state that I used to represent in the United States Senate. We also see Medicaid issues, fraud issues in a state like Maryland, which is obviously a very blue state. But both Ohio and Maryland have worked with us to take this issue seriously. They've worked with the guys behind me. They've worked with our entire team to make sure that they take fraud seriously. Again, this does not have to be a red state or a blue state issue.
No.
This is just basic good government.
No, we are the United States of America, after all, and there are people in these offices, as large as the government is, employing millions of people, and that's on the federal level. If you include all the state level employees, I mean, millions and millions of people. You know that there are positions in the government where people are tasked with investigating fraud or looking into fraud or making sure everything's on the up and up. And if you got these states where only 9 people were indicted for fraud, I mean, obviously somebody's getting paid a lot of money to do absolutely nothing or next to damn near nothing, unless maybe they've got superiors. Maybe the people like on the ground floor, the people that are doing all the grunt work, maybe in the field work, maybe they're doing everything that they can do, but it might be the management, might be those higher up the chain that are just refusing to hand anything over to prosecutors or just refusing to just look into it. Just throw it into a filing cabinet and just forget about it. And rapid response, another one from Dr. Oz. In February, we've had the largest anti-fraud announcement from CMS. Today's effort is even larger. It's much larger, and there's a reason for that. Half the fraud we believe in the federal government could be coming out of healthcare services.
In February, we had the largest anti-fraud announcement.
So Obamacare,
from
man,
CMS,
I'm telling you.
the day after the State of the Union
Obamacare
address,
screwed
in which
us.
the president created this task force and appointed the vice president to lead it. Today's effort is larger. It's much larger. And there's a reason for that. Half of the fraud we believe in the federal government could be coming out of healthcare services. We're a large rhino that can be stabbed effortlessly by foreign governments, like syndicated criminal entities and smaller time operators who can take advantage of the system with, as Andrew pointed out, as little as a Medicare beneficiary number, which is basically a credit card, to defraud this system. Unfortunately, that results in about $100 billion of estimated theft just from Medicare and Medicaid. That, just to put it in the context of affordability, which is a very important subtext of this discussion, we would be able to double the life expectancy of the Medicare Trust Fund if we could deal with the fraud issues just in Medicare.
Unbelievable.
So anyone who's out there working their tail off, hoping Medicare will be there with them and for them, and we know many young Americans don't think that's going to be the case. It will be the case. If we take the fraud out, it'll be there for you and your children as well.
Like life or death
and
now.
Stopping this,
at this
as a
point,
means of extending the Medicare Trust Fund is a noble purpose, but as is pointed out by the Vice President and Mr. Ferguson, it is about the human costs. Because if these fraudsters are willing to take your money, they will definitely steal your life and take your health along the way.
And we're all paying into it. I mean, I'll have to check my pay stub again, but I'm pretty sure that they take out very specifically for Medicare. And it's not a small number. They take out like a decent percentage that we're paying into. And 20, 30 years ago, when it all dries up, largely due to fraud, then what the hell are we going to do? So, I mean, let it be a message to younger Americans. Up to $100 billion, I'm assuming that's annually, that's being stolen. And it's depleting the coffers. It's depleting the funds that young Americans are going to be depending on when they get older. And if it's not there, it just ain't there. And with us already being $40 trillion, $40,000 billion in debt already, there's not going to be any money to replace it with. All right, breaking. We believe that at least half the hospices in the entire area around Los Angeles are fraudulent. So let's get that from Dr.
Unfortunately, we have a reality that, again, we got to face. A third of all hospices, a third of all these programs in the entire country are in Los Angeles. Ask yourself, how is that possible? It's not. There are not that many people dying in Los Angeles. We're not talking about California, just Los Angeles. So Kim and the team, with Janina Ugo and a bunch of other great folks, went through the list of all the people, and we believe that at least half of the hospices in the entire area around Los Angeles are fraudulent. And today we announce 800 of those hospices have been suspended. That's getting us, close to where we think we should be. 800 hospices that last year charged the federal taxpayer $1.4 billion will no longer be paid. Now, Mr. Vice President, if your core business was shut down by the federal government, would you call?
Yes.
You would call. Crickets. We have less than 20 who have complained. We're not even sure those are legitimate. 800 hospices shut down, and we're not hearing much. It's like it's crickets out there. So we believe we're on the right path here.
It's almost as if they're guilty of something.
Next is a nationwide moratorium on all new hospice and home health care. Why is that possible? Because when we squeeze the balloon in California and slow their growth of hospice and now take away 800, the payments to 800 hospices, we know what those fraudsters do. They move to nearby Nevada. Next door, Nevada has a 7-fold increase in hospice already. Arizona, Texas, they're moving across the country. So we're today announcing a moratorium nationally. There will be no new hospices or home health care open in this country. If you have the program now, you can keep it. You can go to ones that already exist. We're not taking away any services, but there will be no new licenses granted until we can figure out a better way of working across government.
Well, amen. That's exactly what they should be doing. And I'm sure they've got top men on the problem. and trying to find a solution to that problem. All right, so announces nationwide moratorium. Okay, so I believe we're probably just going to hear that over again. Let me just make sure. Yeah, so that was from Fox, so I imagine that's going to be the very same thing, but just in case, I'll repost it. There's a direct link to my profile below in the description if you want to check that out, just in case I'm wrong. All right, so A. Ferguson with the FTC. Andrew Ferguson. He said the states should be our partners with this. We want to partner with the states, but what we aren't going to do as stewards of the American taxpayer dollar is to send those dollars, billions of them, to the states to line the pockets of states' attorneys general who don't want to participate in protecting our benefits programs so that the people who really need them actually get the money.
It's a shame we have to be up here at all, and with all due respect to the press, with this room full of reporters. It should not have taken a brave kid with a cell phone camera to point the American people at this issue. This is the result of
22 years
of corruption.
You blew all of this wide open.
In blue states like Hawaii, like the Vice President was just explaining, California, Minnesota, and New York, that have taken tens of billions of dollars to pay lawyers to go after Medicaid fraud that just simply have not done it at all. That's the whole point of these programs. If we have these cooperative federalism programs, we love federalism, we want to partner with states, we love subsidiarity, but if the states are going to participate in this, they have to protect their own citizens when they get access to these dollars.
Because we're paying it on the state level, too.
Not only are these dollars supposed to go to fight Medicaid fraud, I want to shine a light on the real human dimension of the complete negligence and malfeasance of some of these states here. One of the things they are obliged by law to do is stop elder abuse. That is one of the express commands that Medicaid fraud control units are given, is you are supposed to police Medicaid abuse and elder abuse in the Medicare system, too, where so many of America's elderly citizens receive care. And so when the states just take this money and turn it into a jobs program for blue state lawyers, they are effectively participating in the elder abuse in those states, because the American people turned over their money to these state programs to protect their parents and their grandparents from elder abuse. And if you aren't doing it, you are effectively participating in that process. The Vice President highlighted this problem that we have in Medicaid, which is if a fraudster takes your identity, signs you up for benefits, when you go to try to get the actual benefits you need, you can be denied them. This is a problem we have found all over the federal government in benefits programs. I mean, imagine we have
people are reporting them.
This. A mother on SNAP benefits going to the grocery store and trying to scan her EBT card to get groceries for her children. And some gang somewhere in California took her identity, maxed out her EBT card, and so her children are going to go hungry because of fraud that no one in the states is policing. And that is why what we are doing today is so important. The states should be our partners with this. We want to
to be honest, that's not just in benefits. I'm sure anybody listening to this, at least if you've been an adult for a while, you've probably had your credit card or your bank account hacked in some way or another. I think it's already happened to me like 5 times, and I'm very careful with where I swipe my card. Every time I go to the gas pump, I always check to make sure there's not a skimmer there. I actually use my fingernail just to make sure there's not a skimmer that's been placed onto the credit card thing. But somehow they were able to do it, and whenever I report it, get a new card and go through the whole thing, they never investigate any of it. I think the most at one time that they took like $600 and they didn't even investigate it at all. They took it down. I called them back a week or two later. Is there anything going on with it? And they're like, oh, no, we refunded your money. Yeah, but what's like, are you going to investigate it? They reportedly used my card at a gas station. There's cameras there. Well, yeah, I mean, we filed a report, but usually with an amount like that, we don't really look into it. It's insane. And I'm sure the government's far worse than private banking institutions.
With the states. But what we aren't going to do as stewards of the American taxpayer dollar is to send those dollars, billions of them, to the states to line the pockets of state attorneys general who don't want to participate in protecting our benefits programs so that the people who really need them, the people that the American people have agreed to part with their hard-earned dollars to help, to defend, to protect, and to get through hard times, actually get the money. And if the states don't want to cooperate, for the first time HHS, the Fraud Task Force, the Vice President, and the rest of the federal government are going to tell you, cooperate or lose your funds, and we will do the job for you, because at the end of the day, if the states won't protect American citizens,
very unfortunate,
the President of the United States and the Vice President will. And that is why I am so honored to be able to participate in this process.
And you know Democrats are going to fight them on this.
This is ultimately about
because they
making
want
sure
fraud.
Not only that we
they want
aren't
to burn it all
stolen
down
from as taxpayers, but the American people who are entitled to this. For Medicaid and for Medicare, people who have paid into these programs their entire lives actually get the benefits that they are entitled to.
It's unreal, absolutely unreal. And even with the blue states going as far as the administration, the Department of Agriculture, asking them for their SNAP benefits database, the information that they have on the state level, just to see where is the money going to in terms of fraud. And not only did the blue states refuse to hand over that data, they sued them to make sure that they don't have any obligation to hand over that information. So they clearly don't want to work with the federal government. They don't care. They just want the fraud to continue. And there's really no good, just reason for it other than either F Trump, or we just deliberately want to just ruin literally anything and everything that surrounds us as a country. It's absolutely insane. Let's see. So today we're sending across 50 Medicaid programs letters that will require them to show that they are effectively and aggressively prosecuting Medicaid fraud in their states. And if they don't, we're going to turn off the money.
Today, we are sending across 50 Medicaid programs. We are sending letters that will require them to show that they are effectively and aggressively prosecuting Medicaid fraud in their states. And if they do not aggressively prosecute Medicaid fraud, we are going to turn off the money that goes to these anti-fraud units. And I want to say a couple things about this. You may think, obviously, this is a Republican administration. We're all proud Republicans up here.
Yeah,
you may
fiscally
think that this
conservative.
is purely a red state or blue state issue. That's actually not true. We see Medicaid fraud issues in Ohio, the state that I used to represent in the United States Senate. We also see Medicaid issues, fraud issues in a state like Maryland, which is obviously a very blue state. But both Ohio and Maryland have worked with us to take this issue seriously.
Yeah, we did. We already heard this. You know, like there's going to be some overlap here and there, especially when there's multiple different accounts that I grab that have these clips, Rapid Response, and I think HHS Rapid Response was another one. So, you know, there might be a little overlap here and there. But that's all right. So this is going to be the entirety of their the press conference that they gave. 1 hour, 14 minutes, 22 seconds, and I will repost that, again, direct link to my profile below in the description to my X profile. You can also go to White House, at White House, so it's really easy to find. Fortunately with X, unless they changed it, but I checked it just a few weeks ago, and you don't have to be signed in to be able to view any of this, so it's not like you have to like go jump through hoops to create an account and all that. So it's pretty easy to get to and navigate. X.com, that's pretty simple. Anyway, so U.S. DOTOIG, we've initiated an audit that will assess the FAA, internal controls over its National Drug Control Program activity. I'm not going to really go into the weeds with this. Matter of fact, this got absolutely no attention at all. There's like 100 people that saw this post and like no likes, no nothing. So, I mean, not to say that it's like a dead post or anything, but it's swamp related, and I'm sure it's every bit as important as many other things that are happening. So the new audit announcement from today, an audit initiated of FAA's report on National Drug Control Program activities. The Office of the National Drug Control Policy Circular, National Drug Control Program Agency Compliance Reviews, requires agencies to annually submit 2 reports on National Drug Control Program activities. The circular also requires the Office of the Inspector General to periodically perform an attestation review of these reports. Agencies with prior year drug-related obligations of less than $50 million may request an exemption from this review. Accordingly, the Federal Aviation Administration requested exemptions for fiscal years 21 through 25, probably all COVID related or whatnot. As a result, our most recent review of FAA's NDCP activities was for fiscal year 2020, in which we found that FAA did not provide sufficient documentation of these activities. Therefore, we were unable to conclude on the reliability of FAA's reporting on ONDCP. Given the length of time since our last review and the issue it identified, we are initiating an audit of FAA's NDCP reporting. Our objective is to assess FAA's internal controls over its NDCP activity. So that's happening, and probably not exactly in the same vein as fraud. Obviously it isn't, but still, I mean, I came across it, so might as well just cover that real quick. And from the White House, confirmed. Take a look at this if you didn't catch this news. Kevin Warsh has been confirmed as the chairman of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. So there you have it. So President Trump, he got his wish. It came true. He wanted Kevin Warsh to head up the Fed, and now he's going to head up the Fed. Not sure exactly what that's going to look like. I have a feeling that interest rates are going to start dropping, although I would imagine that the Board of Governors would have to maybe not unanimously agree, but I'm sure there would have to be some majority decision if the Fed is going to lower interest rates. Because, I mean, look, everybody's got their own opinion. I don't think interest rates should be lowered in some areas, which I don't think they can cherry pick one or the other. But in housing, at least, if anything, they should be increasing the interest rates, not decreasing them, because housing's out of control. It's extremely expensive. But anyway, so yeah, Kevin Warsh confirmed as the 17th chairman of the Federal Reserve from Steve Scalise, and obviously a Republican House Majority Leader. And he says, congratulations to Kevin Warsh on his confirmation as the 17th chairman of the Federal Reserve. Kevin's experience and leadership make him exceptionally qualified for this role and will be critical to keeping America's economy strong. And from Rapid Response, confirmed Kevin Warsh is the 17th chairman of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. The yeas have it, 54 to 45. I'm sure that's along party lines, I would imagine. Although it looks like maybe a couple of Democrats may possibly have voted yes, maybe. So Speaker Mike Johnson, today we congratulate Kevin Warsh on his confirmation to serve as the 17th chairman of the Federal Reserve. Kevin possesses a deep wealth of knowledge and experience, having previously served on the National Economic Council and as the youngest ever Federal Reserve governor. At a time when the American people demand discipline, transparency, and sound monetary policy, his timely confirmation marks a new chapter for one of our nation's most fundamental institutions. Kevin will be a transformational leader for the Fed, and I look forward to his leadership as chairman. Well, it would sure be nice if he had the same philosophy as Linda McMahon, who is the Secretary of Education, and her philosophy is just to completely dissolve it. Just get rid of it altogether. You know, not literally burn it down, but, you know, metaphorically, just, yeah, dissolve it. Get rid of the Federal Department of Education. And you know what, while we're at it, you know, why don't we work on the Fed as well? Tom Emmer, congrats to Kevin Warsh on his confirmation as chair of the Federal Reserve. Kevin will be a great partner as we move towards solidifying America's status as the world's leader in digital assets and ensuring the United States never adopts a dangerous anti-American CBDC surveillance tool we see in communist China. I don't know, man. That sounds like something that the Democrats would absolutely love. Is China doing it? Oh, yeah. We should totally be doing it, too. And, all right, so we got that one. From a Rapid Response, we're going to move right on to the next one. The president is officially wheels down in Beijing ahead of his historic summit. President Trump is in China. It's the first state visit of a sitting U.S. president to China since President Trump last visited in 2017. So this is just footage of Air Force One landing. And notice the military presence, man. There's a lot of military out there. I mean, they're not like dressed up in their camis. They've got the formal attire on. A lot of people waiting for the president's arrival. He's supposed to be speaking with President Xi Jinping tonight, if not right, like as I speak, probably. All right, so it's 9:24 currently, my time as of this recording. Not sure of the time zone. Is it like 15 hours ahead, maybe? Probably like around noon. All right, well, we get the idea, you know. Air Force One lands from Dan Scavino, and he's with the White House, the assistant to the president, deputy chief of staff at the White House. And he says President Trump is in China, where it is currently 5:25 a.m. Okay, so that was 5. Okay, so they're exactly 12 hours ahead of us. So there you go. I never knew that. So that should be easy to remember. You know, since it's 9:24 p.m. here, it's 9:24 a.m. over in Beijing right now. A big day ahead. Stay tuned throughout the night here in the States. It's a little preview, I think. Ooh, so dramatic. Is that all we're seeing? Okay, yeah, it's just like vehicle after vehicle. It's like a funeral procession all black and white and everything. From the White House, the arrival everyone has waited for. So why not do another one? At least we see people in this one. Mr. President. Damn. All right, that was a hell of a welcome. There you go. Sean Davis breaking notice. Okay, so we're going to move on. President Trump, he's in China. That's the gist of that. Anyway, notice has just been given to Democrats in the Tennessee House. This is big news. That all members of the Democrat Caucus are being removed from all standing committees and subcommittees as a result of their behavior in the State House during the redistricting debates last week, which I showed right here on the Swamp. It was an absolute catastrophe. Democrats were dancing around on their desks. It was an absolute nightmare. I cannot believe that they acted that way, which included setting fires inside the Capitol and attacking law enforcement, which one individual did. And the guy who set the fire to that paper rebel flag, which ironically, I don't think it's just my opinion that's the old Democrat flag from like back in the Civil War era, but he set fire to it inside, like in the lobby or what have you. And I'm assuming that's what they're talking about. I mean, they didn't, like, half the building didn't burn down or anything like that, but still, they did set a fire. In the state of Tennessee, political terrorism will not be tolerated. National Republicans take note that this is how you exercise power. Damn straight. All right. I think it's a little larger here. Yeah, so letterhead, State of Tennessee. Leader Karen Camper. Dear Leader Camper, due to actions taken by members of the Democratic Caucus during the second extraordinary session of the 114th General Assembly aimed at disrupting the democratic and legislative process and creating disorder on the House floor, including, but not limited to, interlocking arms in the well of the House, blocking aisles on the House floor, instigating and encouraging disruptions on the legislative process in coordination with paid protesters and attendees in the gallery, including the distribution of earplugs to a member of your caucus, the use of prohibited props and noisemakers on the House floor, demonstrating a lack of respect toward fellow members seeking recognition to speak on legislation, and flagrant disregard for the permanent rules of order of the House. Members of the Democratic Caucus will receive individual letters removing them from all standing committees and subcommittees of the House, except where membership is required pursuant to Rule 65 of the House Rules. Sincerely, Cameron Sexton, Tennessee Speaker of the House. Checkmate. And from Gunther Eagleman, FAFO in Tennessee, the Tennessee Speaker of the House just stripped every Democrat lawmaker who acted like thugs and trashed the chamber during redistricting of all their committee assignments. This is how to fight back. Well done. So we might get a preview of what they were up to. So emotional.
What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? You stupid mother.
Oh yeah, they set off the fire alarms too, by the way, because of course they did. Why wouldn't they set off the fire alarms? And it wasn't just because of that little flag burning. I mean, we're talking like a little bitty handheld flag that he set on fire. It wasn't like that they burned down like this, 10-foot flag. And from Robbie Starbuck, they're not entitled to committee assignments. That's all decided at the pleasure of the majority. If they want to be on the committees, then they should act sane. And there you go. And we got this from Libs of TikTok, AOC on the new Tennessee congressional map, which would eliminate the last Democrat seat. And it looks like we've got a quote there. So the current Democrat rep is a white guy, which is hilarious, and his Republican opponent is a black woman. You can't make this up. Unbelievable.
When you are seeing states like Tennessee want to wipe out every black representative on the map in these states, we have an obligation as Americans to stand with black Americans and communities whose representation is being disenfranchised.
Now, I think what they're mainly worried about is that when these districts that have been heavily racially gerrymandered, when they bring them into the fold of Republican-led districts, then all of a sudden they're going to see wildly amazing improvements to their local areas. And maybe these locals who live in these districts might realize, oh, wow, maybe I've been voting for the wrong party all along. Like, all of a sudden, the grass is greener, everything's looking nicer, like our budgets are maintained a little bit better on the local level, so on and so forth. I don't know, just a thought. Eric Daugherty, holy crap, South Carolina Senate Leader Shane Massey blocked 2026 redistricting because, in his words, South Carolina is stronger when we have a vibrant and viable Democratic Party. Trump won his district by 34 points. Primary him out. He actually said South Carolina is stronger when we have a vibrant Democrat Party. His excuse, competition makes you better. Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, I guess. It would certainly help if they were on this side of sanity. The competition where Democrats shut down DHS, defund the border, allow the invasion of millions of foreign invaders who are and pillage. I'm not interested in handing those traitors a win. Primary Shane Massey. The fight is not over. Redistricting can still pass. So here he is saying that.
That our state is stronger with vibrant parties. I think we as a whole are stronger when we have a
Democrats
clash
are
of
vibrant,
ideas.
apparently.
I think that's true at the national level. I think it's true at the state level. We are stronger when we have a clash of ideas and we can discuss those policy goals. I will tell my Republican friends, Republicans are stronger when the Democrat Party is vibrant and viable.
They ain't vibrant today, dude.
We are.
Kind of rock you living under.
Competition makes you better, y'all. We know it in the economic sector. It also happens in the political sector.
Yeah, but the problem is the Democratic Party has been hijacked by communists and psychopaths completely. And look, in any of the Democrats that might have a little bit of wisdom rattling upstairs and some common sense, they're bowing down to these radicals, whoever the hell they are, because they have absolutely lost their minds, and it's really unfortunate. Mark Lynch for U.S. Senate. Lindsey Graham sided with the state senators who betrayed the voters and killed the redistricting effort. Lindsey consistently sides with never Trumpers. It's time to dump Lindsey on June the 9th. I have a feeling that's probably not going to happen, but yeah, they absolutely should be doing that. Lindsey Graham urges caution as South Carolina redistricting push threatens to invalidate early votes. And did he give a link or no? No link. All right. Well, I guess we got the headline at least. Guess that's just gonna have to do for now. Do they feature news analytics? Okay, well, they didn't even say where it was from. AP. Well, I think the photo was from the AP. Chairman Joe Gruters. Jeffries has become completely unhinged because Republicans are finally fighting back against decades of Democrat gerrymandering. We won in Virginia. We won last night in Missouri. We're going to win in the other states. We're not going to stop. And we'll check this out, and then I'll have a quick look at Missouri because I didn't catch what happened in Missouri, so we'll check that out real quick. Hakeem Jeffries has become unglued after Democrats' unconstitutional racist gerrymandering scheme failed. We're going to crush Republican souls.
We will beat the far-right extremists. We're going to win in November, and then we're going to crush their souls.
Yeah, just typical violent political rhetoric, as Hakeem Jeffries always does, and many of the other Democrats. Although it's pretty hard to find any violence existing over on the right. It's almost exclusively happening over on the left. All right, so anyway, here we go. Missouri Supreme Court upheld the new GOP-drawn congressional map yesterday, May 12th through 13th. The 2025 Missouri First map, signed September in 2025, stays in effect for the 2026 elections. It splits Kansas City, flips the Democratic 5th District, Rep. Emanuel Cleaver, to Republican-leaning, and shifts the delegation from 6-2 to potentially 7-1 Republican. There you go. Challenges claiming it violates compactness rules were rejected unanimously. A voter referendum effort with 300,000 plus signatures could still go on the November 2026 ballot, but the map is used until then. The short version new pro GOP map is locked in for the 2026 midterm after a court win. Alrighty then. Good news for Missouri, especially if you find yourself to be a Republican in Missouri. All right, so RNC Research Democrat Rep. Ted Lieu, another psychopath, another lunatic, says Democrats will usher in massive changes to the Supreme Court if Democrats gain power. This is why they probably should be thinking about, I don't know, nuking the filibuster, because that's exactly what they're going to do. If the Democrats get control of the Senate and the House, and they end up with we end up with a Democratic president, and if they get all three, the trifecta, that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to nuke the filibuster probably on day one, and then they're going to pack the Supreme Court with, 21 justices or something like that.
This is a radical Supreme Court that is making decisions simply to benefit Republicans. It's going to usher in massive Supreme Court reform when Democrats take control. and that will be because of the actions of extreme political actor John Roberts in this partisan Supreme Court.
Yeah, because that doesn't sound like an abusive relationship. Why do you make me keep hitting you? You know, because it's all the Republicans' fault, because they're making decisions that Democrats just don't like. It's just like how Democrats call everybody they don't like Nazis, to the point where it's just been so diluted to the point where the word really has no meaning anymore. It just simply means somebody I don't like. But anyway, yeah, like I said, that's exactly what the Democrats plan on doing. Nuking the filibuster, packing the Supreme Court, and a whole bunch of other nightmare scenarios that are going to play out. Republicans, Democrat Mallory McMorrow, running for Senate, has always hated Michigan. All right.
And as she packed her car to leave for California, McMorrow had only one more thing to say. Zoom, zoom.
Okay. I mean, I don't think she exactly said she hated Michigan. I mean, I'm sure she's implying that she wants to hightail it out of Michigan, but maybe she just bought a new Mazda. Well, I guess the Mazda doesn't use the zoom zoom anymore. They did a while ago. Maybe that was filmed a while ago. I don't know. I'm trying to give her a little benefit of the doubt. All right, so Senate Republicans, Senate Democrats take over the Senate floor to defend American consumers. Watch as the Trump administration dismantles the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Senate Democrats are forcing votes and putting the Senate GOP on their record. So this is going to be really long. When I grabbed this, it was still live, so I think it was going on for like hours. Yeah, 3 hours, 23 minutes.
President Donald Trump's
we'll just tune in for a minute.
To raise the cost of living for American families. Now, you may remember that Donald
illegal
Trump
immigration did that already, lady. Pocahontas.
On day one. Instead, he is deliberately raising them. His war in Iran.
Why are blue states the most expensive then, and not red states? If it's all the Republicans' fault.
Are jacking up the cost of everything from coffee to housing. And as we will discuss
severe drought.
today,
that's why coffee went up.
His attack on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau cost families at least $19 billion in just 1 year alone.
Well, you know, the high-speed rail system in California is costing taxpayers like $200 billion.
For American
consumers. No rail.
Since 2011, it has been working to catch financial crooks, putting over $21
yeah, because Democrats are so good at catching financial crooks.
Back into the
fraud, the waste, and the abuse.
Hardworking families that had gotten
I think that's one thing Democrats are not good at doing.
From protecting consumers from predatory medical debt to cracking down on hidden fees and shoddy credit reporting practices that raise the cost of loans for families, the CFPB has taken action to shield consumers from getting tricked or tracked by giant
maybe they're just downsizing it to streamline it better. Like what Tulsi Gabbard did at the DNI. Like cut the staff by almost in half and it runs better than ever.
Let me count the ways.
You know, like when Elon Musk bought Twitter, same thing.
The entire staff.
80% of the staff
out
the back door.
All financing
and now it works better than ever.
Funding for the agency. They told the CFPB employees to stop working to protect consumers, literally.
So how many of our family members are losing their jobs in these departments?
Loose lenders who had been
I'm sure there's some people they know.
Americans. They rolled back common sense guidelines to protect consumers, and they pretty much have advertised that there is no financial cop on the beat, inviting scammers.
Okay, well, so anyway, this is going on, or it went on today, got about 5,000 views, but at least 3.5 hours. Obviously, it looked like they started it when she was in the middle of her speech, so there's definitely more of it out there somewhere. And according to Grok, the Trump administration has aggressively tried to dismantle the CFPB, firing most of the staff, freezing operations, ending its headquarters lease, rescinding dozens of rules, and halting enforcement and supervision. Courts have blocked a full shutdown and some mass firings, forcing a scale back to 2/3 staff cut instead of a total closure. As of May 2026, the CFPB is a zombie agency, largely inactive with minimal operations. Okay, so there's people that are just sitting there doing absolutely nothing and they're getting paid for it. Full elimination failed legally so far, but it's been heavily neutered. Something I honestly don't know anything about. I'm not sure exactly what the reasoning is. I'm sure there's a pretty valid reason as to why they're pushing for its full closure. Perhaps it's something that the federal government may be not as good at doing as the state level. Because I know on the state level, at least in my state, we have a Consumer Protection Bureau or whatever it is you call them. A Bureau of Consumer Protection, something like that. From Senator Dick Durbin, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was created to protect Americans from dishonest corporations. But Trump has done everything in his power to destroy the agency to shield his billionaire allies from accountability. Yeah, that's totally why he's doing it. I'm joining Senator Warren on the Senate floor to fight for working families. So what? They were probably the only 2 people that gave a speech because they apparently, at least according to them, they closed the Senate. They took it over so they can get Republicans on the record, even though I'm sure there probably weren't very many Republican senators present, but maybe there were. Today, Senate Democrats will force votes to reverse Donald Trump's rollback of rules that save you money. Republicans will have to choose their constituents or the giant corporations and big banks ripping off Americans. And the AP exclusive, Senate Democrats plan to force votes on Consumer Financial Protection Bureau rollbacks. And okay, so Senate Democrats, led by Senator Warren, are on the floor today to fight back against Trump's actions to raise the cost of living. See how they frame that? We will force 20 different votes to undo the ways that the Trump administration has abandoned consumers and is making life more expensive. All right. And from Tom Emmer, crime, chaos, and catastrophe are the reliable results of the Democrat leadership. This National Police Week, because it is National Police Week, Republicans are pushing back against Democrats' policies and rhetoric that demonize, demoralize, and endanger police officers in America. Defund the police. We will always back the blue.
Republicans will always back the blue. Lisa's right. Meanwhile, Democrats continue their efforts to defund the police and return to the soft-on-crime, anti-law enforcement chaos of the Biden administration. In blue states and blue cities across this country, the danger of Democrats' pro-criminal policies has been put on full display. Just last week in New York, an innocent 76-year-old retired teacher was pushed down the subway stairs and killed by a criminal who had already been arrested 4 times this year alone. And how could anyone forget the innocent young woman who was violently stabbed in the throat on a train in North Carolina by a man with 14 prior arrests? Releasing violent criminals back into our communities jeopardizes
I have some news on her,
public
coincidentally,
safety,
later.
demoralizes police officers, and makes the job of law enforcement even more dangerous than it already is. But it's not just Democrat policies that risk the safety of our men and women in blue. It's their anti-police rhetoric. Look no further than my state's
of course the judges, they're not helping.
Sorry excuse for a governor, Tim Walz, who he actually called federal law enforcement the modern-day Gestapo. Only months after Walz's statement, one of these officers was dragged by a car and severely injured. Crime, chaos, and catastrophe are the reliable results of Democrat leadership. In contrast to this, Republicans are building on our work to support law enforcement and restore safety to our American streets. Under President Trump's law and order agenda, the murder rate has actually dropped to its lowest rate in 125 years. Thanks to no tax on overtime that Lisa was referring to in the Working Families Tax Cuts, officers have more money to support their families. And this week, we're going to vote on more common sense legislation to empower law enforcement and defend the police, not defund them. To all the men and women who wear the uniform every day, who work long hours away from your families, who put your lives on the line for our safety, I think all of us say thank you. 1 week will never be enough to honor your bravery, sacrifice, and your service.
Back the blue. They will always back the blue. National Police Week. And 2 weeks after Democrats' record shutdown of DHS ended, the House GOP is spending Police Week backing the blue and strengthening law enforcement. Americans are about to see once again which party puts their safety and security first and which doesn't. And Steve Scalise, who is the House Majority Leader, which I already said earlier in the episode.
We're bringing a number of bills to the floor this week in remembrance of Law Enforcement Week to try to help give more tools to our police officers across the country. We're also bringing a really important resolution by Zach Nunn to pay tribute to law enforcement, thank them for what they do, and also to stand up against these crazy ideas like defund the police. It's still going on today. You know, you saw a major shutdown finally ended 2 weeks ago. The Department of Homeland Security all over the idea that Democrats still want to defund police. You know, whether it's federal law enforcement, local law enforcement, state law enforcement. The titles of the law enforcement officers can change, but the Democrat mantra is the same. They want to defund them at every level, and we will not let it happen. We won't. We're going to always back the blue. It's a shame everybody does it, but we will. And you're going to see that continue to play out this week on the House floor in actual votes, and we'll be watching those votes closely.
Yeah, well, they certainly tried to normalize the defunding of police, or trying to get people on board with it, even though I believe it might have been in New York. They added money to the budget for the NYPD. I could be wrong on that. Maybe that was last year or something like that, but I think I came across that somewhere. Congressman John Rose, the Senate must pass the Save America Act today. Anyone blocking that effort needs to step aside. Yes, that includes Leader John Thune. Our base entrusted us with these jobs and profound responsibility to secure our elections. We made a promise to our voters, and it's time to keep it. And from the Blaze, Leader John Thune says there's nothing more he can do to pass the Save America Act. We don't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. We had a very spirited debate. I made more speeches on the floor in support of the Save Act than any other senator. Well, dude, you're the leader. But what about the standing filibuster, talking filibuster, something like that? They didn't do that. And apparently that's one of the tools they have in their toolbox, and they didn't want to do that, or he didn't.
We don't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. We called it up on the floor March
17th to get rid of the filibuster.
Several weeks.
I believe I actually think he did say that.
Debate. In fact, I think with the exception of maybe a couple of Republicans,
here were the tie-breaking vote. I think he would vote no.
In support of the SAVE Act than almost any other senator. And we had some votes on it. And we voted on the narrow issue, which is the most popular one, of voter ID. And we put the Democrats on the record. Every single Democrat voted against it. We added, and one of the other elements.
That's not going to do anything. We already know Democrats are on the record with that.
Boys ought to play
stupid.
Sports. We had that vote, and every Democrat voted against that as well. So we've taken what I think are probably the two issues, in my view, that have the broadest public support, and put the Democrats on record, and every single one of them voted against it. So we'll look for opportunities to get other votes. There was a vote on the budget resolution, an amendment that Senator Kennedy offered.
In other words, this ain't happening.
Didn't even get 50
Save America Act
on the
Bye.
floor.
Not happening.
And so we're
not at least with Leader John Thune at the helm.
To advance that legislation. Obviously, it's something that I support. I think we all support, and we think it's something that the American people are broadly supportive as well.
Yeah, 71% of Democrats are in support of it. A voter ID, freaking idiot. Obviously, I don't know if he gave more speeches on the floor in support of the Save Act than any other senator. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe that holds a little bit of weight, but you are the leader, so I'm sure he's giving speeches constantly. And from Scott Pressler, we don't have the votes. Senate Majority Leader Thune said they had a spirited debate on the Save America Act. No, this is a fabrication. Not once did he force Democrats to speak against voter ID. Thune said they don't have the votes to nuke the filibuster. If Leader Thune won't give us the Save America Act, then defeat his two top allies, Cassidy and Cornyn. Louisiana, Saturday, May 16th. Texas, Tuesday, May 26th. So there you go. Primary him out. Get rid of him down on the local level. So let's see what this is. Okay, so I think it's the same thing we just saw. It is. I already know it's going to be the same thing. Like same reporter asking that question. Senator John Thune is getting ripped for refusing the Save America Act. We don't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. And looks like this is going to be from Glenn Beck. Maybe I'll play a minute of it, but I'm not really crazy about this. I just grabbed it just to grab a little bit of information from this post. But
we don't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. We called it up on the floor.
Can we stop? You don't have the votes for the filibuster.
I mean, he probably does.
John, whose fault is that?
Senator Kennedy said he's not going to. He would not vote to
your fault.
Filibuster.
Could it be? Isn't that your job to get everybody? You can't just. I mean, you can get everything else done. You can get things that nobody in America want except for you stooges. You can get all of that done, but this one, we just don't have the votes. We don't. But listen, he's trying really hard. Your blood will boil. Listen to the rest of it.
We don't have the votes to get rid of the filibuster. We called it up on the floor March, 17th. We were on it for several weeks.
Yeah,
and, had a very spirited
somehow
debate.
Doubt
in fact,
that.
I think with the exception of maybe a couple of Republican senators, made more speeches on the floor in support of the SAVE Act than almost any other senator.
I have a feeling Glenn Beck has the record.
And we had some votes on it. And we voted on the narrow issue, which is the most popular one, of voter ID. And we put the Democrats on the record. Every single Democrat voted
we already heard
against
this.
it. We added, and one of the other elements, also popular, was whether or not biological boys ought to play in girls' sports. We had that vote, and every Democrat voted against that.
Okay, you know what? I'll just repost it. All right, fine. I'll repost it. I mean, I thought he was just going to go on a tangent for a period of time, but again, there's a direct link down below if you want to have a look at it. From Amuse, agreed. To be clear, it doesn't take 5 senators to remove Thune. It takes 27 Republican senators who can all agree on an alternative leader to remove him. Reportedly, we've got 13 willing to vote for someone else, but they don't agree on who. Well, that's kind of a problem. Incognito, Speaker Thune is a useless member of the Uniparty who won't force the Democrats into a talking filibuster to defend their opposition to the Save America Act, after which he would only need a simple majority to pass the Save America Act, but he refuses to abide by the will of the voters. And that's something that I kept coming across too when this was still in the news on a daily basis and people were talking about it, this talking filibuster, because Democrats would have to take the podium and they would have to give very long speeches explaining why it is that they don't want it, why it's bad. And the only thing that I heard was, women, when they get married, they change their last name. It doesn't match a birth certificate, which is absolutely stupid, which that's a state level thing anyway. That'd be something that the individual states could iron out as far as, getting together the credentials needed to prove that you are who you are to obtain your voter ID. That'd be handled down in the states. But anyway, so the Uniparty, of course, the elephants, the donkeys. Matt Van Spoel, I cannot believe this. They just pulled down at the Irania Zarutska mural in Providence, Rhode Island today. The mayor called her memorial divisive. George Floyd got murals in every major city, and it was called Unity. You remember that? But Irania's face on a wall is divisive. So they did. They took it down. Unbelievable.
Come my way, Ian. Come my way. Ian, come my way. Come on, Tony. Nice and easy. Walk my way, guys.
So yeah, they took it down. So there you go. That happened. Providence, Rhode Island. So the Irania Zarutska mural in Rhode Island was just taken down because the mayor thought it was divisive, but the George Floyd murals weren't. Let's see. Okay, so just images. Yeah, all over the place. George Floyd. He was such a hero for the left and the Democrats. All right. And mural of Irania Zarutska removed in Providence, Rhode Island, following pressure from Democrat leaders. Quote, this mural does not reflect Providence's values, said Rep. Morales. Its mural been quite divisive and ugly, said Mayor Smiley. All right. Maybe if you live in Providence, maybe consider trying to get them voted out, I guess. AAG, Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon. So proud of my civil rights colleague, Julie Hamil, and these young athletes for standing up for what's right and fighting for women's sports and privacy being violated by California. California girls track and field stars Olivia Viola and Reese Hogan spoke out on Fox Tonight about the growing Title IX crisis under Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, I mean, women deserve to have their own space, their own locker room, their own divisions, and we work too hard for that to be just taken away without anyone saying anything about it. I haven't heard nearly enough adults come out and say anything. A lot of them like to say that they agree with you, that they're proud of you for speaking out, but they won't do it themselves. And I would just say, like, it's too important of an issue. Like, yep. Just because it may not affect every adult out there personally doesn't mean it's not worth standing up for.
Well, the adult...
Like, honestly, in my opinion, I think that it's also up to the teammates, the girls on the team. If they all just refuse to participate, then they wouldn't have a sport to participate in. They wouldn't be able to engage in any meets or any competitions if everyone on the team, because it affects them directly. If they've got transgenders joining their team and they're taking all the first place trophies and they're outperforming everybody else, you know, they need to be more unified. And I also agree with her that I'm sure that there are not nearly enough adults speaking up about it either.
Sonia Shah spoke out about this. I want to play some sound. Another adult speaking out. This is Riley Gaines talking about A.B. Hernandez.
Of course, Riley Gaines.
look at how many girls A.B. Hernandez in California has impacted in many different sports. As you just talked about, you've been reporting on this same athlete for years now, at least 2 years. It has affected so many girls, and they deserve equal opportunity, they deserve safety, and they deserve fairness in their sports.
And the bottom line in all of this, Reese, is it's just not fair to you guys.
Yeah,
Right?
Riley's completely right.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're a fan of Riley Gaines,
Yeah.
and you support her, but it's one of those things where, I mean, what would you say back to her? If she said that, what would you say? You know, she's right, and how important is it that she's speaking up for this as an adult?
I mean, this is my 3rd year competing as a transgender athlete, and last year I was stripped away of a CIF title, and I basically worked my whole high school career to get to that point. Not many athletes get to that point in CIF where you're battling for a CIF championship, and it's just really disappointing to go into a competition knowing that you're already going to be beat by a male. So given that opportunity to have a fair competition is something that we've been fighting for, and I think that we should have.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, really, it may just have to get to the point where you just have to transfer to a whole nother school system, at least if you're in a state or in a district, or not a district, but in an area where they do school choice or what have you. I mean, if they don't really care about the teammates or the other girls that are competing that are being stripped of their titles or stripped of their trophies or positions, maybe that's just another way to go about it, because in California, I somehow doubt that they're going to put a stop to this anytime soon. However, Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon, she said that the civil rights colleague, Emil Law, and the young athletes they're standing up for what's right and fighting for women's sports and privacy, which is being violated in California. And of course, Harmeet Dillon, she heads up the civil rights division for the DOJ. So I imagine this is probably working its way through the courts, or at a bare minimum, they're looking into it already. I'll repost that also, because it went on a little bit long. So the FBI Director Kash Patel, the lies are always the loudest when it's the Trump administration, and this FBI delivering record results in crime fighting. The fake news breathlessly gags on the lies. So here are the facts.
Be concerned about, and so are many people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I respond? This is what real leadership looks like at the FBI. Every one of you was given it. This is what's happened under my tenure at the FBI and the Trump administration. 20-point drop in the homicide rate. 45,000 violent offenders arrested last year, twice as many as 2024. 2,450 criminal gangs disrupted. That's a 322% increase from 2024.
Good numbers.
6,900 child victims have been located since I've been in the seat. That's a 144% increase. 2,900 child predators and human traffickers arrested. That's a 70% increase. And we've arrested 8 of the top 10 most wanted fugitives in the world in 14 months.
Yeah.
That's twice as many
So what
in
are the
4
bad
years
things, Ms.
combined.
Democrat?
That is what the men and women of the FBI are doing, well-resourced. Everyone should take a look at this. If people want to continue the baseless, fraudulent, false personal attacks at me, that's great. Keep the target on me, as I've always said, but the mission has never been better.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just
Amen.
respond in the
Senator
last-
Murray. Of course, she wants to go into a back and forth, probably making up God knows what, and she would have responded with, the State Department is publicly restating the United States' generous offer to provide additional direct humanitarian assistance to the Cuban people. The Cuban regime must decide whether to accept our offer or deny life-saving help for the Cuban people who desperately need it. I have a feeling they're probably going to deny it, even though I'm sure, desperately need it. I mean, they're on the verge of losing electricity on a daily basis because they have no more oil. Under Secretary of State Jacob S. Hellberg, direct flights, economic recovery. The president's 3-phase plan for Venezuela is delivering results for Americans and Venezuelans. This isn't just about travel. It's trade, energy, and rebuilding economic ties in our region. And Embajada de los EU in Caracas. I'm assuming it's a Caracas government profile, probably the embassy, right? Yeah, U.S. Embassy in Venezuela. All right, so anyway, another historic milestone for energy and trade as United Airlines announced it will resume flights between Houston and Caracas in August. Thanks to the leadership of the president, the 3-phase plan will boost Venezuela's economic recovery and foster growth for both countries. And I will link that below in the description if you want to look into that. And they just started chartering flights between Miami and Caracas just a couple of weeks ago. So we've got international flights heading down to Venezuela now. And House Foreign Affairs Committee majority, Russia and China not only sell weapons, they finance them with favorable terms to lock developing nations into long-term dependence. This bill gives the State Department a powerful tool to compete aggressively in the global defense market and ensure when allies buy, they buy American.
President Trump's executive orders on improving arms sales made clear that expanding U.S. defense exports is both a national security and economic necessity. This bill authorizes a direct financing mechanism to make that happen on terms that put America first. Foreign military financing has historically been provided to our foreign partners and allies on a non-repayable grant basis. While this is positive for our industries and our military interoperability, we need to also be able to offer financing terms that are more attractive to current and future recipients. Russia, China, and others not only sell weapons, they finance them with favorable terms designed to lock developing nations into long-term dependence. Even our allies have expanded their defense financing options, such as the European Union's $175 billion SAFE program. This legislation gives the State Department a powerful tool to compete aggressively in the global defense market and ensure that when allies buy, they buy American. This legislation would authorize the State Department to issue foreign military financing loans and loan guarantees, taking an America First approach to ensure that our DIB has more opportunities to capture the international market. It also authorizes the State Department to establish flexible terms for such loans so that they are more competitive and stay on terms that are beneficial to the United States. And it authorizes the State Department to use money collected from FMS administration fees to fund its activities, to help fund the additional activities created by this legislation and recent executive order changes. This bill is the definition of America First, and I urge my colleagues to support it.
All right. Buy American. America First. Support it, colleagues. DNI Tulsi Gabbard, millions of people will be traveling from around the world to visit the United States during our nation's 250th anniversary celebration and to cheer on the world's greatest soccer players at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. We are working closely with our interagency partners to ensure the intelligence community is fully engaged with law enforcement elements to support the safety and security of all Americans and visitors attending events across the 16 host cities. And she's got a press release, which I will also link, repost, so you can find that in the description by clicking on the link to my profile. Also, as I've said before, you could go straight to her profile, DNI Gabbard, and you can read it there as well. Secretary Brooke Rollins, another day, another battle. Dairy farmers are vital in rural America, but now face radical ESG mandates disguised as sustainability, as Heartland Impact notes pathways to dairy net zero will burden small farms with costly compliance. Let's look at the facts and the tough questions. So let's see what we got here. So there's a video. Let's see part 2. First, data from the EPA that the climate hoaxers don't want you to know. Agriculture accounts for only 10% of total U.S. GHG emissions. 10%. The dairy industry produces less than 1% of AG emissions through enteric fermentation. Meanwhile, our land is a significant negative emissions factor and net carbon sink that removes 13% of emissions. Overall, the broader AG land sector is a net carbon sink. And yet some dairy processors and major retailers are bowing to the altar of the radical climate agenda, pushing net zero by 2050 commitments based on the climate hoax. These pledges force costly intrusive data demands on farms, even though everyday consumers aren't asking for them or willing to pay more. Now, layer on international rules. Under the EU's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, large companies must collect, verify, and report massive ESG data across their entire supply chain, reaching all the way down to individual family dairy farms. Advancing the EU's Green Deal, they force aggressive environmental goals under the banner of sustainability. And this raises tough questions. If market access depends on ESG compliance, is it really voluntary? Are Americans willing to pay more for food to meet climate hoax goals? Are European ESG policies accelerating the decline of U.S. dairy farms and threatening rural communities? Could ESG scores impact lending, insurance, or land values? When did sustainability stop being about good stewardship and become about compliance? And the ESG mandates have no place in American agriculture. Dairies shouldn't be forced to bend the knee to radical ESG demands pushed for ideological reasons. American farmers they feed the world through results, not virtue signaling paperwork. We should keep activist agendas out of our farms. So grateful to my partners across the president's cabinet who are fighting every day for our great farmers and ranchers. And she tags in some individuals in the cabinet. I have loved my time visiting so many of our great American dairy farmers in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Texas, Kansas, California, and so many other states. Thanks, Deva Cow Lover. Let's see who this is. Abby Swan, Wisconsin dairy farmer, wife, mother, registered nurse, for bringing this to our attention. We are on it. And I'm assuming that she's the individual in the video. And of course, I will also give that a repost too. All right. And rolling on to Senator Kevin Cramer, grateful to the president for his support of the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. The House should take this bipartisan momentum and get the bill across the finish line. And President Trump says, as I said at my State of the Union address on February 25th, the American dream of home ownership is under attack. For example, Rachel Wiggins, a mom of two from Houston, placed bids on 20 homes and lost all of those bids to gigantic investment firms that bypassed inspection. They paid all cash and turned those houses into rentals, stealing away her American dream. She was devastated. Stories like this are why I signed an executive order to ban large Wall Street investment firms from buying up single-family homes. Also in my speech, I called for Congress to save the American dream of home ownership and ban these purchases permanently. Senators Bernie Moreno and Tim Scott have worked to ensure my call becomes a reality and have a bill which has passed the Senate with nearly 90 votes. I'm asking Congress to pass that bill, the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, which would ensure that homes are for people, not corporations. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. And Acting Secretary of the Navy, Hung Cao, protecting our homeland is an absolute necessity. It is the very reason the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Marine Corps exist, but defending our nation comes with a profound cost. We will be judged not just on how we defend our country, but on how we care for those who answer the call. This is our responsibility.
The last person that wants to go to war are warriors like us who've seen death and destruction in this country. This is also the unseen wounds of war afterwards. Again, I've had a lot of traumatic brain injury and as well as PTSD, and I don't want that for our children. But sometimes there's a necessity out there. The Iranians have been at war with us for 47 years. We just didn't know it. They killed our Marines in 1983 in Beirut. In 1979, when the Shah of Iran was overthrown, the Marines took us into to the embassy. I was living overseas in Africa, and they stood watch over me, saying, nothing's going to hurt you, not tonight. And I want to be like them when I grew up. And that's why I joined the military. And all the EFPs and all the IEDs that killed and maimed our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines in Iraq, Afghanistan were built in Iran, ma'am. And that's why we had to put a stop to it now, because history is going to judge us for what we do at this moment.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a state sponsor of terrorism, the world leader, the leading sponsor, a state sponsor of terrorism. I mean, they got to get handled at some point. From Space Systems Command, I think this is what I'm going to finish up on. How do you talk to thousands of satellites with just a few antennas? Meet the JAM, our cloud-based solution that connects operators to antennas worldwide, speeds up control, and keeps emissions flexible and resilient. Watch Acquiring Minds to see it in action. Sure, why not? Acquiring Minds.
Welcome to Acquiring Minds,
Space Force,
where we break down how space acquisition empowers today's warfighter. In the modern era, our strength in space is defined by numbers. Today, vast constellations of military and commercial satellites provide unprecedented coverage and capability. But this creates a new challenge. How do you communicate with thousands of satellites using a limited number of ground antennas?
Damn, they got thousands of
The Joint
satellites?
Antenna Marketplace, or JAM, developed by Space Systems Command, is foundational to the future of Space Force satellite control, accelerating the delivery of antenna services to Space Force operators and mission partners.
JAM is a secure, cloud-based marketplace that connects satellite operations centers to a global network of commercial and government antennas, creating a flexible and resilient on-demand service for satellite communications. The Joint Antenna Marketplace is a key part of the Space Force's hybrid architecture strategy, developed through a modern software acquisition pathway that delivered the first operational prototype within 3 months of contract award. By aggregating and dynamically scheduling available antennas from industry partners, JAM expands capacity, alleviates congestion, and reduces scheduling conflicts. By using JAM to connect with commercial antennas, the Space Force expands its ability to control a growing satellite fleet. This approach provides scalable and resilient access to antenna services, establishing a foundation that can evolve over time to meet increasing demand and incorporate advances in commercial antenna technology.
As the space domain becomes more congested and contested, the joint antenna marketplace will be there, ensuring that when it matters most, our warfighters have the clear and open lines of communication they need to protect our nation's interests in, from, and to space.
Oh, well, there you go. The JAM, Space Systems Command, because it's necessary to be in communication when you're in the military, especially when you're out in the field on the ground. All right, well, that will do it for tonight's episode. If you enjoyed the video, please give the video a quick like and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow night as we explore the swamp Monday through Friday. I also post on X, which is where you can peek at some of the content for tomorrow's episode. And don't forget, the video clips from tonight will begin appearing on the channel tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. Thank you very much for watching. God bless the troops, and God bless America.